Okay, and we're live.
Yay, we're live.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to our February Book of the Month live show for Seat at the Table Book Club. I'm here as always with my partners in crime. We have Brittany from Melanin Eclectic and Nicole from Nicole's Book Corner.
Okay, YouTube.
And we're trying to make sure that our live is actually live, so don't mind us while we're trying to figure some technical things out, since YouTube wants to change the format every single time. Okay, here we go. I can see us now. Some technical things. Oh, here we are. Perfect.
Side note, I was rewatching the video I made announcing this book club, and Brittany, did you realize I said Melanin Eclectic instead of Melanin Eclectic?
I think it's because some people say it wrong. I didn't even notice. I would have been like, "Hey, so it's not. Nope. I never noticed. I don't even care because I have to sing it to spell my own name sometimes.
Really?
Sometimes I forget how to spell eclectic, but I have a song, so it spells it out every time.
I can't.
I'll have you guys know I don't actually have the book. I swiftly returned.
I'm done. Okay, so we're about to get started. Our book of the month for February was She Would Be King by Wayetu. And I was just telling the girls before we even went live, I was like, I have a confession to make. And they guessed it right away. And I was like, I haven't finished the book. I'm halfway through because it put me in a massive reading slump. And I was having a really hard time enjoying it. I started off with the audiobook, and I usually really enjoy audiobooks. But this audiobook had me so confused. I would have to rewind, and I was like, what is going on? Who is the narrator? Where am I? Who are
the number one question? Who the heck was the narrator?
The narrator was
Charlotte, right?
Was June, Charlotte Emerson, also known as June Day's mom, who was a ghost who became the wind. You know what?
And then June Day became the dirt, right? Or something like that. Like
June Day became the dirt. No, not June Day.
June Day's father became the dirt.
Day became the dirt. Okay, let's go in order.
Yeah.
Let's start off talking about who wants to give a synopsis. Try to.
I don't even know how to give a synopsis.
I don't even know how to give a synopsis because it was
like different stories.
Yeah. So wait, the first story is about Bessa, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so the first one was Bessa the witch, who technically was only considered a witch because she was born on the night that an old woman died.
Because the old woman beat her cat.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, and it was wrong to beat cats in that particular thing. Okay, look.
Okay, let me just start off by saying I started rereading. Well, first of all, I only got halfway, so I am going to finish. Second of all, I did start rereading parts of the beginning because I wanted to have something to say during this live. And I wanted to remind myself of what happened. I will say during the reread, I enjoyed it more because at least I knew kind of what was going on. And I feel like this book was told in a series of vignettes that didn't need to be there. And it kind of reminded me of like when an author writes a book series and then they write a novella to explain the backstory so that you have more information on the characters. So you read a book series and you go in the middle of the action and you're starting to get what's going on. You get to know the characters and you get the story. But then the author comes out with novellas to be like, hey, by the way, let me tell you the backstory of this character so you have more information. And I was like, I feel like she wrote a novella in the beginning of this story. And then when the story actually started was already halfway through the book. And it annoys you as a reader because you're just like waiting for the story to start. And you're like, this is great. And getting all this backstory, wonderful. And a lot of the backstory could have been like told, interwoven into the actual action of the story. It could have been.
My least favorite part was that every time I would get to the end of a chapter, I'd have to rewind because I really wouldn't realize got to the end of a chapter. Because it wasn't like chapter 6 and then it started. It was like a new chapter and she would just keep talking. And so I would go from June Day and Norman being in prison to June Day being on a boat. And I was just like, well, how did you get from the boat and the prison? And it would drive me crazy because I only had the audiobook.
Yeah, so I did recommend the audiobook because I started with the audiobook. I was so confused. I was like, there's no way. I need to see the words. I need to see how she's formatting this book because the audiobook is not helpful. And so when I started reading the actual book, it finally became a somewhat of an easier and more enjoyable reading experience because I could see the way she formatted the story and it started to make sense. And you can kind of see like, okay, so this is like a flashback. Okay, so this is like a little side story because you can physically see it. But when you're just listening to the story, her just randomly going into like another scene that has nothing to do with the scene she just
or like she was in Africa one second, the next second she was on a plantation, and I was like, oh, so that transition happened very abruptly. Who's
and
this?
there's no heading, there's no like meanwhile
Yeah.
in Virginia.
I was like, oh girl, we went from Bessa realizing, because at first I thought Bessa was dead, but she's not dead. And then by the time that realization happened, we're talking about Charlotte. Yeah, we're at Charlotte's point by the time I realized that Bessa's not dead, but I want to know why she's not dead.
Okay, we have to give a synopsis because people are not going to understand who we're talking about or what's going on if they haven't read the book.
Let's see. The main characters of this story are Bessa.
Yes.
Junde.
Yes.
And Norman.
Yes.
However, I don't know. I'm sitting here thinking of how to give a synopsis. I cannot because
Troy?
It's all over the place.
Oh, I don't guess you've never watched any of my videos. I don't do synopsises. Okay. She Would Be King is basically the story of 3 gifted or cursed people and their lives during the ending of the slave trade. That's as best as I could do.
Actually, that was good. Yeah, that works.
And I will add that each of them represents something because the story is about the formation of Liberia, which was a free colony, Liberia started off as Monrovia, which was a free slaves colony where I guess towards the end of the slave trade, some people felt bad and they decided to start a colony for free slaves on the coast of Africa and named it, I don't know if it was named Monrovia first, and then it eventually became Liberia. And so you had all these different people congregating in this.
I think it's still called Monrovia to this day.
Really?
Yeah, because they still call Freetown, Freetown.
That's true. But you had all these people like congregating. So you have Bessa, who represents like the tribal and like original people of that land because she comes from like the Lai people, right? The Lai people.
Yeah.
Lai, whatever, yeah.
And then you have Junde, who escaped from a plantation in Virginia, and he was a former slave. And then you have, what was his name?
Norman.
Norman, who was born on the island of Jamaica to a slave. No, she was a slave. His mother was a slave, and his father was a white British scholar. And so he is biracial. So you have these 3 different people who represent 3 different types of, like, I guess, slavery / liberation.
Yeah.
And that kind of describes like what Liberia means and what Liberia came to be. And you have all this other stuff happening. So I guess I could say that much.
Yeah. I think that's a good description. It sounds, y'all make it sound way more
interesting than it is
than what it was. It was just like,
So what did you guys rate the book in the whole sense?
Well, because I didn't go back and reread it to try to like understand it better, I just read it straight through, like as if, because you're supposed to be able to read a book straight through and not feel like you have to go back to understand it. I actually rated it a 2.
I rated it 3.
I was left at the end of it just like, so what happens? Like,
right when it was getting good, it just got done. It was just over. And I was just like,
it took so long to get there. So when it finally happened, I was like, okay, finally, this is what we're talking about. And then it was just like the end.
Honestly, the book should have started. The book should have started where the second book started.
Isn't that where Junde and Norman meet?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, look, if it would have started where Junde and Norman met and just gave us quick little glimpses of their backstory, yes. I think I would have liked the story better. Because I got so confused in the beginning trying to figure out who were the important people. Because there's so many people thrown into this story.
Like the doctors who were like in there for like a couple of pages and then died. And I was just like, well, what was the point of having this whole little section of the book telling about these doctors that she lived with for all of a couple of weeks?
But they use plot devices. So the author used a lot of things as plot devices that, to me, was kind of lazy of her. Like, I really liked her voice and I really liked her lyrical style of writing, and I liked how she injected like magical realism into the story. So I like her as a writer, but I felt like there were certain things that happen in the plot that were clearly just plot devices. Like, clearly those medicine doctors were only there to die at that specific time to make it look like she killed them so she could get exiled from the village. She was like, how can I get Bessa kicked out and exiled? And so it was just so obvious to me. Like, they had no deeper meaning to the story. They had no deeper relevance to the story.
Yeah.
And then there was Safwa. I could not stand him.
He was a fuckboy for real.
Well, my thing with the Safwa situation was like, he was completely unnecessary. Because what did he really do? The only thing he really did at the end was give her a reason to care.
And then he didn't even do anything. He was like shipped off to America to become a slave. So I'm just like, so exactly what did he do for you that made him so great? And then I laughed. I don't know if you got to this part, OhSheReads, but when Gerald comes in and they start fighting.
Okay, what happened?
It's the most weird, abusive,
that was the honest thing I've ever read in my whole life.
Okay, so you didn't get to this part, but basically what happens is her tribe actually comes and invades Monrovia, and they get captured. So when she finds out that they're Vi, she goes in and she sees a guy that looks just like Safwa, who turns out to be her son. So, or it turns out to be Safwa's son. Sorry, not her son.
The one that supposedly died?
Yeah, the one that supposedly died, which they do not explain, by the way, but I digress. So then she's also married at this time. So her husband's name is Gerald. So she's like, she wants to go talk to them because, you know, she knows their language. And like, they don't just invade for no reason. It has to be a reason. And he's like, no, you can't do it. So apparently she just decides, I'm going to go do this anyway. Like he wasn't going to find out that she was going to the jail to see them. So he finds out and he comes back into the house and he like slaps her. And apparently she just goes like,
she goes crazy and she starts hitting him and undressing him
and scratching him and like rips off her clothes and like
and then they just have sex. That's it. And I'm just like,
yeah, they do all of that. She starts going ravenous, and apparently for him that's a major turn on. So instead he like just starts trying to have sex with her, and I'm just like, what just
happened? Wake up and start talking. Like, it was so normal.
Yeah,
I really what happens to that relationship.
That sounds disturbing. I will say this, that like the women's relationships with men in this novel were their like weak points and their lowest points. Like, horrible things always happen to them because of the love of men, mostly their sons, like with Charlotte Emerson and how she gave birth to June Day and she found out she was a ghost. That was weird.
Gave birth, because I'm just trying to understand how you give birth. Like, are you the ghost Virgin Mary? Because like, it was just like, wait, you find out you're dead and now you having this dude's baby? How, Sway?
That was really confusing to me. I was just kind of like, I'm confused. But I thought it was supposed to be like metaphorical, like it's like it was supposed to represent something. I just don't know what that is yet. And I might need to think about it a little bit more or read some like analytical breakdowns of that. But I was just kind of like, okay, so she's a ghost and he's a man who lost his, well, a very strong theme during that whole part of the book talking about the plantation was the broken souls of Black enslaved men.
Yes.
American men, and how like slavery had broken their souls to the point where there was nothing left. They were just like a shell of themselves. And the women were almost, in a weird way, the novel, at least how I took it, was the women were almost handling their captivity a bit better than the men. The men were just kind of broken and they're just kind of trying to survive. You know, their wives were being sold. Like raped, killed their sons, everything. Like they had no control, they had no power. And so that's how I saw Day as a representation of like that broken buck. Because remember, they kept talking about how strong he was, and like they don't make him like that no more. And
I was like,
right. So I was like, okay, so he's clearly like the broken buck, and she's like, well, her situation was weird because this whole time she thought that they just hated her, and it turns out she was a ghost and nobody could see her. So
and no one ever explained to us why she was a ghost.
No, nobody. There was no explanation. It was just like she hit her head on a stone. We, the readers, think she's fine until the day she realizes that she's actually dead.
Yeah.
When Day shows her grave. And then everything starts to click for her. And she's like, oh, that's why no one ever talks to me. And that's why he was scared when he saw me, because I'm not real.
And it was like, well, why can he see her, but no one else can?
Exactly.
He never, ever told you how he saw her. He wasn't there.
I guess
was basically telling you to accept the supernatural and just go with it. It's like, don't question it. Just go with it. Just go with it.
There was a lot of that in this book, and at times like that is what magical realism is. Like things happen that are not explicable, but you're just supposed to go with it. But I feel like it was overused to the point where it went beyond being magical realism and it became actual magic, and there was no explanation. There was no, like, for example, like you said, like he could see her and no one else could, and there was no explanation. And then it was unclear whether he was actually having sex with a ghost, which is weird in itself, or if she just like, she in all of her like ghostly, all otherworldliness, just created this kid. That was
because I remember that part in the book, because when she announced that she was pregnant, I remember being at my desk like, wait, what? And then she was like, oh, well, I know this is your baby because I can feel the pain you have from missing yours. And I'm like, so did you just manifest this baby from his pain?
And then it was like, she had said that like she thinks that the baby is probably actually not hers, but his, and his wife died. And I was like,
and then didn't she say the baby must have looked like his wife because of how he reacted to it?
Yeah.
The whole situation was just.
Oh, but here's another part that also confused me about that. Like she went through an entire labor process, and the labor part was completely real and very visible to everyone.
Yeah.
But I was
like, there was blood, like the baby was found on like bloodied like cloths, and but like, they couldn't see her. It was very
bleed. It was a lot. That whole section for me, I was like, I understand that there's supposed to be magical realism, but at some point I need an explanation, because this I don't think the other sections of the story bothered me as much as that section. Like June Day's entire plot story, I was like,
but again, I felt like June Day's conception, birth, and everything was just a plot device so that Charlotte could become the wind, because June Day's birth was what caused his father's death, because then the overseer and the other, what were they, soldiers or whatever on the plantation, discovered that he had a baby in there, ended up killing him, and out of her grief she became the wind. And so I'm just kind of like, I feel like things are happening so like something can happen to, I don't know if that makes sense. Like, I'm gonna make these three things happen because I need this one thing to happen. And I don't know why it bothered me so much, the way she went about it, but it was. What happened? What?
Oh no, I was saying it's specifically June Day section that bothered the daylights out of me, because at least with Norman's, we got a little bit of explanation about why his mom can do what she does and all that stuff. At least we got a little. June Day's, it was literally just like, here, girl, like make do with it what you will. At the end of it, I'm gonna be the wind.
Why couldn't that's exactly what I was about to say. Why couldn't it just be that Charlotte has always been the wind? In Greek mythology, didn't Aphrodite come from like sea foam? So why couldn't she just be the wind? Like,
I don't want her to just be the wind watching over her child. I wouldn't have asked any questions, honestly.
I wouldn't have either. And it wasn't, what bothered me also was that it wasn't until that section that we realized that she was the narrator. And at that point, you are well into the beginning of the book, and you're just like, oh, she's the one telling the story? Okay.
But then I was like,
Yeah, like what was the timeline of that? Like, how did she know what was going on with Bessa before she died?
Yeah.
So she was already dead prior to Bessa ever being exiled, which you have to like draw conclusions yourself.
I'm just basically
because
accepting that.
because remember when she tells the story about how she travels over to Africa and she sees Bessa in the woods? So that's when she becomes aware of Bessa, is when she was driven out at 13 into the forest. And she was like, and then in her part of the story, she was like, oh, and you know, after Day dies and her son gets taken from her, she like becomes the wind, travels through the sea or something underneath the sea. I don't know. Through Africa's shore.
About that part. I feel like that's as close as we're gonna get with her, because I think I guess look, that's when I figured out Charlotte was telling the story, and then it transitioned to, what's the other slave girl that we focus on before we get to June Day?
Her name started with a D, and she,
Darlene.
Well, there was, Darlene, because she became June Day's mom, and she named him Moses. Remember?
Oh yes, because she also was forced to have an abortion.
That whole scene infuriated me to no end, because it was just like another slap in the face of the reality of slavery and what was going on back then. How dehumanized Black bodies were, and just how the plantation owner's wife was talking about and to the girls who worked in the kitchens, and how her own daughter was talking about them. Well, like, my slaves over in Georgia. Like, I was like, what the?
They're all thick in my home, Mom.
I was like,
well, that's why I don't read books about slavery, because I can't. Triggered, because
like, it just shocks me each and every time. I'm like, why am I so shocked? But I really am, by the mentality of these people back then. Not to mention the way that I want to say her name is Darlene, but I could be completely wrong. I can't remember. But the way she was treated by the plantation owner's wife, just because he was attracted to her, like, that was her fault, and just because she was beautiful.
Oh yeah, how quickly it was like, y'all are nothing but devils, just here to tempt my husband. And then like, but girl, don't you know that like that's your property? So like, it always blew my mind how like the person that was persecuted was always the girl that was being raped, though at that point in time she was telling herself that she wasn't being raped and that he really loved her.
Exactly. Which was her way of coping. Not to mention, I feel like that was the perfect identifier and representation of how white women at that time were so angry at like white male patriarchy and their place in it, and how low they were on the totem pole. Like, as his wife, she had no power, she had no control. She just had to accept his infidelities, look the other way, and lie about it. But she's looking for an outlet for her anger, and so she takes it out on the Black, beautiful female slaves that are actually being abused and raped. It's like she can't see the forest for the trees. It's like, y'all are both in the same position, except for one person is considered not even a person and seen as property, but you're also considered property. Like, you're all under the same white male patriarchy, and instead of you just being like, you know what, this is terrible and my husband is a horrible person, you're looking for an outlet. And that just frustrated me of how like real it is. What?
That's why she got jumped.
When Darlene finally snapped and attacked her, I was like, slow clap.
Right? I was at my desk like, get her.
Even though we knew at that moment she was probably going to die for her actions, I was like, slow.
Yeah, I think at that point she knew, well, if I'm going to die, I might as well whoop her behind before I die. Like, they're going to kill me anyway. Let me just go ahead and whoop her.
Yeah, get a few licks in before I go out.
Right.
Exactly.
I was just like, yes, finally. Don't take that crap from her.
No. But
then that's also when June Day became an X-Men.
I know. He turned into the Hulk. Trying to protect his mom. He turned into the Hulk.
I was like, so, because again, there's no explanations for June Day other than like, he would be like, my mom never noticed how much faster I was, or like how strong I was. Like,
how would you not notice that?
Yeah, I was like, she's your mom, bro. If she's not noticing you manhandling like stuff that takes grown men, groups of people to do, I feel like something's not right here. For her to be as obsessed as she was about Junde or Moses, whoever we want to call him, I feel like she noticed and she just didn't say anything because she didn't want to bring attention to that, because he was at that point he had become a bigger Black man.
That would have made more sense if they had a conversation about it and she noticed it early on in his youth and was like, had a serious conversation with him and was like, you need to hide this at all times.
Right. Instead, it was just like, she never noticed. And then I saw her get hurt and I just jumped in front of her. I'm like, oh, okay. Now you can't get shot? Okay.
I know.
Luke Cage, but I'll take it.
And that's what confused me a lot in the story. Is I wasn't confused about Norman or Junde at all. But with Bessa, it was always like the question of, well, is she or is she not? Like, is she really escaping death, or is she just really that lucky? And you literally don't know until the very end.
You don't know until the end. Sorry, Teddy is losing it. Teddy. It's okay, bro.
He agrees with everything that we're saying.
Mm-hmm. Teddy, come here. Come here, Teddy. Come here. Come here. Oh, Lord. No, I'm sorry,
y'all. Not with it. It's okay. We understand. We feel your pain.
Oh. It's okay. Say hi to the people.
Hi.
Oh. Hi. Oh.
I'm mad he started barking. You said say hi.
I know. It was a coincidence, though. He's just mad. He's mad. I think there's somebody else in the house, and he's like barking. But anyway, what were we talking about?
We're talking about Bessa's power. Was it
immortality,
gift, or was it?
I took it to mean, this is the way I rationalize it, and take it to me. I mean, take it with a grain of salt because I haven't finished the book. But I just explained it to myself as saying like, oh well, I guess the collective energy, because the villagers, the Lai people, their belief system was only powerful because of how much energy they gave to it and how much they believed in it.
Yeah,
that's where the power came from in all of their beliefs, and like, this is cursed because of this, and all of their traditions only held power, I think, primarily because they believed in it so much. And when you give that much energy to something, it becomes tangible, it becomes real. So I felt like them always calling her a witch, the way they treated her, it almost like manifested itself into reality. The fact that like everything that they said about her, even though it wasn't true, and it was literally just because of the day she was born, and she was born on an unfortunate night, because they believed it so bad and because they pushed it on her so much, and she actually began to believe it, I felt like that's where her power manifested from. And that was just like my way of rationalizing it, because otherwise there was no explanation.
Basically, this story would have been better if she took time to explain the parts that she didn't explain and shorten the parts that she did explain.
Pretty much.
Yeah, because I don't really have a problem with like open-ended type books, like where you just like at the end, like, wait, so what happens? And you just never kind of get a conclusive answer. But it was like, you don't get a conclusive answer to anything.
No.
Throughout the whole book, I'm just like, well, I'm not reading a mystery novel. Like, and even then at the end, I'll find something out. But I'm reading what's supposed to be this, I guess you could call it historical fiction.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because they took a little bit of history and like added in the magical realism.
Yeah. But like, you just don't really get anything. And I was just like, you have such a nice voice in the audiobook. I don't particularly hate the way you write. I just don't think I like your storytelling.
Like, I didn't like the format of the story. I liked her voice, and I liked the writing. I thought the writing was really beautiful, and some of the sentences really packed a powerful punch. Like some of the things that some characters would say, I'd be like, ooh. Especially like the colonizers, I'd be like, But I didn't like the format of the story. I thought it could have been formatted a lot better.
It was very flippy.
Yes.
Yeah. Plus, I felt like while she was telling the story, it was basically like she was telling one story, and before she actually got to the end or like a good closing point of that story, she was already jumping to another story. So it was like I needed a closing point that was going to take me to the next story, instead of just being like, and he turned to sand deep in the heart of Jamaica. You're like, well,
that's exactly how it sounded.
I was like, wait, why are we in Jamaica? Did he go to Jamaica?
We needed a bridge.
Yeah.
Also, can we talk about Norman, right?
Yeah.
Norman's life and like his mom and how sad that whole situation was with his mom.
It was very triggering. It was just like, oh yeah, sometimes my mom would have to sleep outside.
No, can we talk about the fact that the freaking doctor, I can't remember his name, or scholar, whatever, was literally experimenting on them?
Yes.
Yeah.
Like his idea of family time was poking and prodding his son and recording his reactions.
That part blew me. Like the fact that you could actually, and this is how a lot of slave masters taught, like the felt and I can't think of words, but yeah, this was their ideology. Like you could literally create a human being and be this kid's father, but you treat them like a science experiment or like a, like a piece of property where you have no emotional connection to this person whatsoever. Because he kept calling Norman her son.
Yep.
Not our son or my son. That part was so triggering to me. I was like, this is crazy.
I felt sorry for him because he had like no friends, and the girl he ended up liking, like,
oh yeah, forgot.
Norman.
Yeah, his life was so sad.
Affinity towards Bessa, and then Bessa disappeared and married Gerald.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I thought that was an interesting depiction of the fact that he was biracial and his skin was so light and he so closely resembled the colonizers and slavers is what made him an outcast.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was like light skin was seen as like the enemy, and
because the people of the mountains were free because they didn't have to interact with the colonizers. So for him to go up there looking like a colonizer, it was like, we don't want you.
Mm-hmm.
Spent all this time getting away from you. Why are you here?
Yes.
He's looking like, my mom told me to come here though.
I know.
Wait, you know what else annoyed me?
What?
As far as how she went, there were some times where she would put sentences in French or sentences in some African language and wouldn't translate them.
I know.
And I was like, I'm glad I took basic French, because if I didn't know basic French, I would have really not known what some of them were saying.
Yeah, I didn't know. I just kind of tried to do
reading.
Loose.
Yeah, I just kept reading.
Yeah, it was just like, oh well.
Guess it wasn't that important.
Yep, I was like, if it was important, I would have gotten a translation, because not everybody just speaks French.
I know. I'm trying to think what more I wanted to talk about. Oh, I wanted to talk about that scene where, going back to June Day's story on the Emerson plantation, how a plantation owner's wife kept like bringing in doctors like every couple years of June Day's life to prove that that wasn't her husband's illegitimate child with Darlene.
She just needed some Prozac.
And the doctors were like, this is not his kid. It doesn't look anything like him. It doesn't look anything like her. Like,
but how would she have had a big stomach for 9 months and she never see it?
Well, remember that one time where she came into the room and she was like, you're getting fat. But that was the time where she actually was pregnant.
And she was only 4 months.
Yeah.
You're not that big at 4 months.
So it was just
like, got an abortion. How would they even have figured? I'm sorry. How would they even have gotten the baby out at 4 months?
I tried really hard to figure that part out, and I
tried not to think about it, because at 4 months, that is a fully forming fetus, and
I feel like they cut her open
after that procedure.
I felt like they cut her open and took the baby out, and also took out her uterus and everything.
Oh,
I think they took it all out, because she continued to sleep with the plantation owner, whatever his name was, Emerson, after that, and she never got pregnant again. And she said that this procedure was so painful because they probably didn't give her any anesthesia, because they were also experimenting on Black women at that time on plantations.
Yeah.
And so they didn't give her any anesthesia. And I just remember they said that it was so painful to the point where her mind literally blocked out the event. Like, how much pain must you be in for your mind to literally block it out and be like, we're never going to remember this again?
Oh, yeah, because whenever her sister would mention it, she would act like she didn't know what she was talking about.
Oh, my gosh.
And she said she didn't remember. She said she didn't remember that night. So I'm thinking she completely blacked out. Like, her mind was like, this is too horrific and painful.
Physically and mentally blacked out.
So I think they cut her open. They took everything out. I really do feel like that is what happened.
Guys, I have one question. Why can't any of you ever choose a book that's just super chilled out?
That's not
it's actually.
I didn't know people were gonna go for it. It was a vote, okay, and everyone.
I mean, that kind of brings up the whole thing we were talking about before, where it was like a lot of people have given this book super high accolades, and it's not that this book doesn't deserve some accolades. It's just that we shouldn't just be praising it because it's a book about Black people. It's like it still deserves some criticism here.
Yeah, I think that we're doing the right thing by being critical and really like speaking our true thoughts. I will say that right now in the middle of the book, this is a 3-star read for me. We'll see how it goes by the time I read the second half, if I ever do, to be honest with you. The 4-star reads, I feel like, are coming from people who just deeply, deeply connect to the actual themes behind the story and the traumatic events that are going on. Because I don't know, I felt like this time when I was rereading, I was like, some of this stuff is so effed up and so triggering. So I feel like if you're in a certain mood and you're in the right place and you read that stuff, that can almost make it a 4-star read, just simply because of the trauma and like the way that the things that took place are being described, like so nonchalant, like kind of like how we had to really read in between the lines of like her abortion.
Yeah.
And how we have to read in between the lines of a lot of things in the book. And some of the things that some of the characters said, and we're just like, this is horrific. But the way it's being told is not like, this is horrific. It's being told in a very lyrical, beautiful prose.
It's
so
like
when you stop how some people would give it 4 stars just based off of, you know, stuff like that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I could see that, but I think, honestly, it didn't really start becoming a cohesive story until after Junde, Bessa, and Norman met, and then Bessa got taken away.
Yeah,
and that's when the story actually started becoming one story. And to be honest, I didn't need any of their backstory to understand what was going on, because they had already talked about each one of their powers.
Yeah,
like at that point. So it was like, if we would have just started right when Norman and Junde met in jail.
Yes.
I would have actually been okay with that. And then when they finally met Bessa, it could have been in a dream state that they showed like what happened to her. And I would have been like, okay, we're good. Because after that, Monrovia is what it's called. Like a lot of the story after that takes place in Monrovia, and then the tribes around Monrovia.
Right.
So it was like, okay, this is Liberia. This is what we were talking about.
Yes.
But that wasn't until what, part 3?
Part 3, which I haven't gotten to. But exactly. I agree.
Exactly.
I agree, because my whole reading of part 1 and part of part 2, I was just like, okay.
Yeah. I was just kind of like, so are we going to get to Liberia or nah? Because even with Norman's part, it was like, so are you going to take me to the freelance? So I was like, okay, so that's how we're going to transition to like the free people. That's how we're going to transition. And then we didn't transition. She died. So it was like, okay. And then like, Norman gets caught. I'm like, so we're never going to get there.
It was awful. Like, just, you couldn't really, like we were saying earlier about not being able to figure out a synopsis, you really couldn't figure out where the book was going. Like, what was going to be the central plot of this. Up until the end, I was like, oh, that's what all this backstory is for? Like, it didn't really like make any sense for you to tell me that while Junde was in prison, he touched one of the Black girls. Like, why was that important?
I know.
She didn't pop up ever again.
No.
There was a lot of moments in the story where they would introduce this character and make the character seem so important, and then just pretty much wipe the character out within the next page.
Yep.
So you're kind of just sitting there like, well, okay. Like, even with the Junde part, it was like, so y'all made us believe that he was like falling in love with this girl, and then y'all just completely.
A lot of those moments were, like I said, clearly plot devices, like clearly using this character that has no deeper meaning to the story to get the main character to a certain emotion or event, and to give a reason behind why the main character is about to do something that they're about to do. And I don't know, it just bothered me because I felt like it was lazy.
I also want to tell, this is another, I wrote it down, but I turned the book back into the library and threw all my sticky notes away because I was over it. Because I had so many sticky notes where I was just like question marking.
Yeah.
So so we're at the point where Bessa gets to Monrovia because she's saved by the free Black people who consider themselves better than the white slave owners because they actually pay their people to come work for them.
That part was so disturbing.
But they still have like this really creepy elitist attitude over them. It was like, I could understand that actually being a real thing that happened. But at the same time, it was really disturbing because it was like, but like, you know what this is like. And you're still like, you still feel like you need servants.
Yes.
You still feel like you have to be above somebody. And even when you haven't gotten this far, OhSheReads, but like, even when Bessa goes from being like the house worker to becoming a wife, that whole part was just so disturbing. Like the whole Christian woman, like the typical nasty Christian woman was ridiculous. It was just like, can y'all gonna jump her with the scripture? Like,
and then it like really showed like their true colors as well, because at the point where Gerald tells everyone like, I'm gonna marry Bessa, even his cousin, what was the cousin's name? Henry?
Yeah.
Even when he told Henry, he was like, but she's a savage. She's not one of us. Yeah. It was just like,
but it was like, you came back to Africa and like, they're not a part of you. Like,
all I can say is white supremacy. Because what it does is it creates a brainwashing, and it creates a place where you literally hate yourself and you hate everything representative of who you are. So when you're giving even a little bit of power, you feel like power is exemplified by white supremacy and the way that they act. So when you're given power, you start to mimic them and the way that they behave. I don't know. That's just what it sounds like to me.
Well, it's true, because even when they were in Monrovia, like the top Black people were mayors that were under the supervision of their white leader. So like the younger generation was like, we don't need these white people here. We can govern ourselves. And then their parents were like, no, they're here for a reason. Like, they help us with trade. Without them, we wouldn't be able to do anything without them. Like, it was a very clear point being made where it was even like, we're free thinkers.
Coonery.
Yeah, it's like, we're free thinkers, but we still need them to help us do things.
It's that place where you're broken down in your psyche to the point where you literally feel like you have no worth or value if a white system is not put in place above you.
Yeah.
You don't think that you can do it on your own. You don't feel intelligent enough or capable enough to do it on your own because they've spent time systematically breaking you down to feel like you're not good enough to do it on your own.
Agreed, unfortunately. And it was very prevalent in this Monrovia.
That's really disturbing.
Yeah.
So many triggers in this book.
It's a lot. You don't realize that it could be a triggering book until you get deep. Like part 4 was, I guess, it was more like we need to get the tribes to come join us, and like that way they can it wasn't until they needed an army or they needed people that they wanted to consider the actual natives of that land. Or it's like, we could use them. But before it was like, oh, we don't need them. They're savages. They steal our men. Yeah. Like, it was wow. So y'all are literally doing the same thing that the white plantation owners, the white plantation women were mad because y'all were stealing their husbands. But then y'all come to Africa and say all the savages are stealing your husbands. Like, what?
It's crazy.
Like, I wanted to come in this book and like smack one of those women. I cannot remember her name, but
the aunt, right?
Yeah, the aunt was out of control. It was like, don't you think that it's a sin to wear your hair down and make all of us look bad and distract our husbands with your long, beautiful hair? What?
Amazing.
Like, even stopped her at the door and pulled out a scripture from Proverbs, trying to quote it like, your long hair is a sign of vanity. I was like, she just...
Oh, the same book that was used to oppress all of us?
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah. It was like, okay, girl. I don't think that's what the scripture is saying, but go off.
That's crazy.
It even kind of annoyed me that her friend Macy was still also trying to push it on her as well, kind of like the whole Bible thing. And I'm like, girl, do you realize if you would have never left Africa, you wouldn't even be Christian? So why are you? She really had this greater than thou type characteristic about her. Because even when Bessa tells her, like, I've changed and not for the better. And she's like, no, you changed for the better. Like, who you are now is better. And I'm just like, how you going to tell that girl that?
It's very condescending.
Her whole life was
trash.
Like, yeah.
I was like, because it was basically the conditioning idea of, it's like, oh, well, I'm cursed. Well, you're not cursed, baby, because you're covered by the blood of Jesus. Well, maybe you should ask her why she feels like she's cursed. I don't know.
That shouldn't even count. The devil was an angel.
Okay. I'm done.
I'm just going to sit. Excuse me a second.
I will say a pattern that I noticed throughout as much of the book as I read that frustrated me.
OhSheReads, every time you say,
I'm sorry.
Every time you say the parts of the book I read, it kills me.
I'm sorry, y'all, but I'm not gonna lie to the people.
But go ahead.
Barely got through it, but the strong Black woman trope, and like how Black women literally had to survive, from Bessa to Darlene, can't remember her name, hope her name's really Darlene, to whoever Norman's mom was, even to Charlotte, like the level of just like subjugation that they were under and how they had to survive, but also how like every Black male kind of let them down. Like from Bessa and what's his name? What was his name?
What was his name? Sunjay?
No.
Well,
I cannot remember.
What are you talking about?
I cannot remember the guy that Beth was obsessed with.
Oh, Safwa.
Safwa, yeah.
There you go.
Thank you. How much Safwa let her down in so many ways, and how like she was a good distraction for him to like appease his curiosity when he was young. And like even after he admitted that he was in love with her, he still didn't stand up for her. He still didn't take up for her. He still left her, and him thinking like the little things that he did for her was enough. Well, who brought you fish when you were about to starve, and who, told your mom?
Once, bruh, calm down.
That was so disappointing to me. I was like, really?
It doesn't get any better, because like at the end, it would really annoy me about the whole Safwa thing. At the end, she literally is narrating, Charlotte's narrating about how Bessa was thinking of Safwa and hoping that he would always watch over all the gifted people. I'm like, you don't even know if he's dead. What do you mean? He didn't really watch over you. He kicked you out of your country or city.
Or like she's living a good life, but she feels bad because Safwa's not there. And I was like, I don't know what Safwa did to you, girl, but like, you got to let him go.
He did not care for you whatsoever.
Yeah.
Whatsoever. Because his actions disproved all this emotion that she was showing him. Like, okay, his thing was, well, I didn't kill you when I had the option to. I brought you fish this one time. I talked to you 3 times when we were like kids. Yes, I've done a lot for you. I'm like, no.
I watched you at the river.
So that was creepy.
Like
that was really creepy. And then how he was like, I would follow you, if you left, I would go with you. And then when she was actually under persecution and everyone thought she had killed the medicine couple, and like also in conjunction his son, who now I'm realizing didn't really die, so that pisses me off. He didn't stand up for her, and he didn't say no, like she didn't do it, like she didn't do anything. He allowed her to be banished, and he probably banished her himself. So that just that pissed me off. And then also I felt like the love that, no offense to Moses / Junde, but the love that Darlene, I think her name is Darlene, I cannot remember her name, the love that she had for him and how she clung to him, because after her whole experience with the plantation owner and how he basically like raped her and she had to psychologically psych herself into thinking she was in love with him, even though that's how that was. And the whole abortion and all the horrific things that she'd been through, her taking care of June/Moses made her feel like she had a purpose and made her feel like she was loved, because the plantation owner's wife always took time out to be like, you're a horrible person, you're an evil woman, God would never love you, no one will love you. Like, that was crazy to me. And how she just had to eat that abuse because she was a slave and she just had to take it. And then she kind of poured out everything into her love for her son. But at the end of the day, in a weird way, her love for her son is what ended up getting her killed in a weird way. So that annoyed me.
Yeah.
And we could
I can't even blame, like, at first I was like, dag, June Day, like, you still got her killed, bro. But at the same time, it was like, I think because he was still figuring out his Hulk powers, she wasn't going to survive anyway, because she had provided what she had provided what was needed for June Day to have his awakening. So basically I knew she was going to die at that point, because every character, once they've been used for an explanation, they die, basically.
Yeah.
So when she died, I was like...
Same thing with Norman's mom, and how she had this horrific life and how dehumanized she was by that guy, the scholar, I can't remember his name right now, the British scholar, how he dehumanized her, how he used her. Like that part where he basically was like, oh, well, you know, I've been on these voyages and I've been away from my wife for long periods of time. So yeah, I'll just rape you and it'll be fine. And I'm just like,
or when she was like, I'm pregnant, and he was like, how? I mean, how? I was like,
that was always their response, because that's exactly what the plantation owner said to
Diane. I was just like, I can't listen to these kind of books at work, because I catch myself wanting to like talk, and you obviously what I'm about to say is not nice or work appropriate. So I'm like, hold myself.
And so she only stayed in that abusive situation with the British scholar guy because of her son, and because she gave birth to him. And also because he convinced her that he was going to take her to Freetown, which was never going to happen.
Yeah, she saved him.
And she saved his life. I don't know, it just pissed me off because she was so kind to him. Like, they were all so accommodating and kind of their owners, I guess. And I understand, like, you're in a very tough situation where you literally have no rights and you're seen as property. But in her situation, I guess it just really annoyed me that she saved his life, that she told him about her powers and about her history and her tribe, her background. That annoyed me. I was like, he does not deserve to know all of this information, and how he's literally studying you like a science experiment, experimenting on you and your child.
And raping you still.
And it's like she never connected the dots. She never was like, oh, he's treating me like I'm a possession and he's experimenting on me and studying me. I should probably stop talking to him and telling him about my people. But she just kept doing it.
Access to people,
and he was taking advantage of it because he realized that she was so beaten down by being a slave that she had no defenses against him, because she was literally so beaten down by her life and her circumstances that she had no way to actually stand up for herself. And he realized that, and he took advantage of it.
Yep. And it was gross.
It just annoyed me. I was like, I'm annoyed. The women in this book are suffering.
The day comes for them to go, and she's like asking the man, like, is this taking me to Freeland? And the guy's looking at her like, why is she even talking to me? And then she looks at him, and he basically, like, at that point doesn't even speak to her, but tries to like drag her on to the thing. And then she starts fighting him. And I'm just like, it's come down. This is the second story where the Black woman has just been like, screw this.
Yes.
Start going to town on him. And both times they died.
Yes. And that's what irritated me. I was like, dang. And I know that's just the reality of the time, and, you know, but it's still just really, I hate reading about stuff like that.
You think you're irritated now. Wait till you get to the end.
Yay.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to ruin the end for you.
Yeah.
But
I mean, if there is an end, I don't even know if you call it an end.
I don't know if we're going to call it an end. If anybody in the chat has read it, do you call the ending an ending? Because I do not. I almost feel like she cut off a sentence when the book ended, because it literally basically is just like, and then I turned around, story done. And you're like, yeah, the way that the entire climactic ending leaves you in such confusion that you don't realize the book is over. And I was listening to the end via audiobook, so I didn't realize it was over until it was like, you just finished reading She Would Be King. And I was like, oh, I did? Like, okay.
Yeah. Cut off of chapters. So when it told me that I was done, I was like, done with what? This chapter?
Yeah. It was
not a good sign.
That's my main critique. I needed more flow, basically.
Yeah.
Or if not a flow, I needed good transitional endings.
I don't know how y'all continued with the audiobook the way you did, because I could not do it.
I was at work and I tried I'm gonna be very honest. I have not finished. I read one book and I didn't get the urge to want to read again until after I finished this book. Because anytime I sat down to actually read this book, I just was like, I'm gonna go do something else. It's depressing. It just puts me in a bad mood. Nothing about this book makes me happy. I don't like reading trauma books.
It's hard.
To be honest, I like took the speed up to 1.5 and do it like that, because audio always read so slow and I can't take it. So I like put it on 1.5, and I think that like is why I ran through it so quickly after that.
Abigail said she didn't realize that it was about to end either. See, we're not the only ones.
I mean, to be a little bit more positive, I did like the symbolism and the themes. I just didn't like, I think my main problem with the book was honestly the execution. Like, her writing was fine. Her style of writing was fine. I mean, not the way the book was written and formatted, but her style, how lyrical her writing is, and like her voice is very powerful, and she has great ideas and great themes. But I felt like honestly felt like everything was a plot device. So I don't know what the point of the book was. It's almost like
were just plot devices. Nothing about nothing about part 1 and part 2 was taken into part 3 where I felt like it was necessary.
Yes. And honestly, I understand that she's trying to tell the story of the formation of Liberia in a creative way, and in a way that is actually interesting and not dry or overly historical. But I still felt like, I still stand by what I said in our group chat, our text group chat, where I said, I feel like she was trying too hard to write this deep literary masterpiece. And it shows. It's very telling, at least in my opinion. And so when I'm reading it, I'm just like, this is unnecessary. This could be cut out. This is fluff. Why does the story start here? What is going on? You could have started the book like in the action, like in the actual action of what we are talking about. And you could have had either flashbacks, or you could have intricated their backstory and interwoven it within the story, and we would have been fine. And then if you wanted to go into so much detail about our 3 main characters and how they got their powers, you could have given us a great little novella or like a story on your website kind of telling us, and that would have been great. So that was those are my overall thoughts on everything.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I tried to think about it more for the fact of, what did each of their what did each of their gifts / curses represent? And I struggled, especially with Norman's, because Norman's, the way that they described it is that he would blend into the forest. And I guess that was him going invisible.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I can't think of how this relates to anything symbolic. It's like, I can kind of look at June Day and be like, you're strong despite everything. You're strong. I could kind of make an argument for that. But Norman, I was like, I don't understand the purpose of your gift.
Of his gift. I felt like I read a review that basically said Norman's gift was a symbolic representation of how slaves were ignored and just treated as like property and just like background, and weren't really giving any attention or any true consideration. And I understood that reviewer's efforts to try to explain that, but it wasn't really exemplified in the story, at least as far as I've read, enough for me to like really co-sign that fully. Like, yes.
I can't truly co-sign that.
Yeah.
Because later on in the book, Norman becomes a fighter, but not in the same sense that we think of fighter.
Okay.
Like, he starts, him and Junde basically go on this like 2-man adventure, just saving tribes from Frenchmen trying to turn them into slaves, basically.
Yeah.
So it's like I can't even look at. No, I don't think so. Because Norman kind of became the mastermind of the entire operation, and Junde just ends up, doing it with him because he doesn't want to be alone.
Yeah. Oh, here's a scene that really like stuck with me. Did anyone else's heart drop to their toes when the white men showed up at the live village and you were like, it's the beginning of the end? And they showed up with like their guns.
With the gifts and the guns?
I was like,
when they pulled out the mirror and people were amazed at the mirror, I was like, oh no, it's
girl. I literally
colonizer.
My heart dropped. I was like, this is the end. This is the beginning of the end of you as a people, your civilization, your way of life, like your lives. Because remember when they were the tribe, well, not all of the tribesmen, but I could never, Safwa, because since he was the king, and then like a few of his, I guess, soldiers were suspicious of the white men. The elders were like, oh no, welcome them.
They were like, welcome them in. They brought us gifts. And I'm just like, no.
And then Safwa like reached for his like weapon, and so did like some of his soldiers. And then I guess the leader of the white men that came was like, no, don't shoot them. Not yet. I don't know if y'all caught that. Yes. But he's like, no, don't shoot them. Like, don't, not yet. And I'm like, it was like, it's the beginning of the end.
I think at that point of the story, I was already like, what is happening?
Oh, really?
Yeah, because that was when Bessa died, but didn't die because she had noticed that she was bitten by a viper. And I was like, when did we get here? Why?
I'm so upset that was the opening scene of the novel, because that really confused me.
It made no sense to be the opening.
Yes.
None.
The opening. I basically ignored Bessa's entire beginning story because, it starts with her. I basically, after I got to the part where it was like the birth of Junde, I just tried to ignore Bessa's part because I was like, well, maybe Bessa's going to come around in this story and like bring it all together. And then we jumped back to Bessa and I was like, no, we're not. Okay. I don't know how to take the story at this point. I tried to ignore her story at one point.
She had a shaky foundation because the book opened with the whole viper scene, which had no contextual reference and made no sense. And then we go from that to the old woman beating her cat and like that whole
keep her in her, like tries to run off to the forest to have her. And I'm just like,
yeah, then we go from that to Bessa being born. And I'm like, okay, wait, so the girl, okay, so this is the origin story of the girl from the beginning of the novel that was fighting with the snake. Okay, what?
Also, did you notice that like throughout her story, like it didn't actually show any viper scenes?
None.
And then it was just like, FYI, I was bitten by a viper.
Yeah. Like, remember that opening scene in the book? Yeah, it was real. You're like,
because when she said that, when she had mentioned that she was bitten by a viper, I was like, oh my God, that's the girl. So that's what they were talking about in the beginning of this book. And I was like, damn, nope, y'all did a terrible job with this.
All because Charlotte Emerson / The Wind was narrating the story, but didn't want to tell us she was narrating the story until like 4 chapters in.
After she had given a virgin birth to a ghost baby. I'm still stuck on that.
None of the verse in this except Bessa's made sense.
I agree. Just like, Bessa's mom made me so sad because she tried so hard not to give birth on that night, but obviously you can't control those things. And then her father, this is what I'm talking about like the women in this book, all the Black women being so strong and just enduring and doing what they have to survive. And so many of the Black men who were supposed to have their backs, like letting them down, like how her father just like never came back home because he was so ashamed. And he was a fisherman. And I guess he just like was out fishing from sunup to sundown and just never came home because he was so ashamed that this curse had befallen them. So he abandons his wife and child. And so she has to pick up the pieces and she has to figure out like how she's going to take care of Bessa on her own. And it just infuriated me. And then
also the fact that they wouldn't let Bessa help her.
No, they wouldn't, because she was, Well, because remember they had that one bad dry season or rainy season or something.
Oh yeah, and they
blamed it on her. And so they were like, oh, she can't come to the rice fields anymore. Like, this was her fault. And then that's when their family really started to suffer because they weren't getting enough food. And then when they finally came to get Bessa when she was 13, like, it really shook me how her mom basically just treated her as a stranger and was just like, here's some food. Sorry, gotta go. And that was the last time she saw her mom. I was like,
I felt bad for her mom throughout the entire situation because her mom was literally in a rock and a hard place. She was a baby, and then she would just cry herself to sleep every night. And I'm just like, I'm sorry, this book starts off depressing and ends in confusion.
Yeah.
So
all the women in this book have really, really hard lives and circumstances that are just horrific, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
It was like, no.
It was just like, God dang it, is another woman gonna die?
Yes. Yes, she is.
She's a mom. Yes, she has to die.
Yes. And then the only person that didn't die that I thought was gonna die was Macy. So when Bessa goes to forgot the name of the place already.
Monrovia?
When she goes there and like Macy kind of takes her under her wing and Bessa starts calling her her sister, and you know they're like crying when like when they're separated, and I'm like, oh God, this relationship is getting so close. Macy's gonna die. Like Macy's just gonna die. And then Macy didn't die, but Macy became that one Black person that basically tells you, oh, you have to. Macy is like the book equivalent of Daniel Caesar, where he's like, conform to the white people and do what you're supposed to and you'll get better in life.
Yes, pretty much. Yeah. Well, Daniel Caesar's situation just struck me as he came off as very uneducated.
Yes.
He came off as someone that really didn't study too much or read too many books on Black history collectively. He's Canadian, right?
Yeah.
And I was reading some comments and some people who were reacting to what he said, and they said that a lot of Black people in Canada have that same attitude because they're very disconnected from the reality of Black history, and they've disconnected themselves from it mentally, and so a lot of them have that mentality of just like coon to survive, I guess is the best way I can put it.
I mean,
that is amazing.
That's the best line ever, because I was just like, when he hit that line and he was like, basically like, to be successful, like you have to appease white people. And I was like, what world do you live in, man? What world is this? And all of that was caping for that one white girl. I was like, no.
Oh, I didn't know who she was until that happened.
I didn't know who she was either until I saw that, because I was wondering why they were caping. And then I did research on her and I was like, you're caping for her.
She's very problematic.
I'm still not sure 100% who she is.
Basically, her latest foolishness was her basically bagging on two Black women that do the same thing she does.
She's like a party promoter / host. She puts together events, basically.
Yeah.
She does events. She hosts.
Like you would see her picture on a lot of those club posters, basically.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then her one before that was she had a shirt on that said "N-words be lying." And she put it on social media like, can I wear this shirt? And, yeah.
She's very problematic.
She's one of those people that thinks being problematic is cool until she gets like called out for it, and then she plays the victim.
What kills me about that is if you're gonna be brave enough to say it, just keep on moving. Don't start crying about it after that. You were brave enough to say it.
I know.
Ownership.
I think the issue is that she works in a space of Black culture, and that is a part of her job. And I don't think that that's wrong in and of itself. I just think that it's wrong when you start to appropriate a culture that you have no understanding or knowledge of or respect of. And it's very obvious that you do not respect the culture. It's very obvious that you do not understand it. You just feel that because of your position of privilege, it's okay for you to appropriate it and wear it like a suit and use it as you see fit to make you look cool or make you look culturally relevant or make you look edgy, whatever you're trying to go for. And then because you're being co-signed by Black male athletes and Black male rappers and a lot of these Black males in these powerful positions, you feel that because they're co-signing you, that it's okay for you to continue your behavior. And then when Black women are brave enough to call you out on this behavior and say that it's problematic, wrong, whatever you want to say, and that you need to educate yourself and humble yourself and stop being so reckless. Now you want to cry tattoo tears. That's my issue with her. I was just like, you need to sit down and close your mouth and listen to what people are actually saying, because nothing you're doing right now is okay.
Another, Black women be out here trying to do it.
Same things happen on BookTube, but I'm not going to get into that.
Right. You know what?
I will say that a lot of people, I ran into a lot of people who were saying, well, we don't want there to be a division of races, and we don't want there to be like a race war. We want to have we all want to be one and things like that. And I think that that's wonderful. And if we lived in a utopia, then that would be a very realistic.
Saying all of this,
people who were saying that they didn't support Daniel Caesar, but they understood where he was coming from, which is like that positivity overall, one love, one people.
I used to feel that way. I did. And then I went to Florida State and I no longer feel that way. Just saying what it is.
Well, the thing is that you have people using that like positivity overall, one love, one mind mentality. Either there are people who are coming from an extremely religious mindset, or there are people who are using that as a way to accuse Black people who feel differently, or other people of color, or even white people who feel differently, of being divisive, my favorite word, being divisive, or wanting to start like a race war, or like not like wanting to perpetuate racism and things like that. And I don't think that's what it is. I think that if you don't acknowledge what has been done and what is on a lot of levels systematically in society continuing to be done, and you don't have respect for it, and you don't want to have an open dialogue to like understand all sides, it's just going to continue to perpetuate it. No matter how much one love and positivity you want to slap on the face of it, underneath it, it's going to be the same things that have been going on. And so that's my issue. I'm just like, well, we haven't actually talked these issues out.
Yeah.
Like, we're just now starting to have open dialogues about these things where people aren't getting angry, and, well, at least some people aren't getting angry and wanting to end the conversation. Like, we are now as a society, mostly because of social media, now starting to have these conversations where people are actually listening to one another.
Right. I'm sad. I really liked his album, but I gotta cut it off for now.
You like who?
I like his album, but I'm a firm believer in, he said make him broke. So like,
I liked his music, and
I know like 2 songs.
I like his whole Freudian album. I thought it was done really well, but like he said, make him broke. I'm just gonna cut that stream right on off for now.
Brittany said, "Say no."
Moment, there's an opportunity for him to do some education and some self-reflection, and if he chooses to do that, it can go right back into my rotation. But for right now,
yeah, I think he may have shot himself in the foot. I imagine he's gonna start backpedaling pretty soon when he realizes his sales are dropping.
Soon. We're going to get a press release at some point on Facebook or Instagram, or he's going to use the excuse of being intoxicated. And, the every other week now with a celebrity or a company. So same thing, different person. There's
always someone that says like, guys, I was young and naive and I didn't know. And I'm just like, bruh, I don't think 18 is very young. They really be old when they be saying it.
I can even accept that at 18, you was just being mouthy and reckless if you grab it by the horns, per se, and address it before people address it for you. Mm-hmm. Because even some older YouTubers, like, I remember, like, I've seen videos where they were trying to quote unquote be called out, and they were like, I've already addressed this in a video like years ago. Like, I realized that I was very problematic and I was a terrible person, and I admit that, and I leave my videos up because that's just an example of like the person that I was and the person that I am now. I can appreciate people like that, but the people that are like, oh, I would never be racist, and then because everything is on Twitter, somebody goes and they're like, well, in 2014, you're like, dang.
I know.
Those are my favorites. I'm like, you didn't even check your Twitter first.
I know. I really appreciate when people can just embrace a moment in time for what it was. Like, I'm just waiting for someone to say, you're right, I was a horrible person, I was a shitty person, I was racist, this is horrific, like, please drag me, continue to drag me, but just know that I'm not that person anymore, and I work hard every day to better myself, educate myself, like, blah 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 blah. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm just waiting for someone to say that, and no one ever says that. They just blame it on being young and not knowing what they were saying. And
at this point, you've already said it, so just be like, yes, I did say it, I did, and I apologize.
There's proof.
Out of line.
Like, if your friend from high school says on some live, like, oh, she did this, and this, but she ain't got no proof, okay. Saying I didn't do that is one thing. But y'all will try to say you didn't do it, and there's, like, videos and tweets that they can go find. And I'm just like, what common sense does that make?
It
like,
doesn't make any
makes no sense.
None. I'm trying to see if we have any comments. None worth mentioning.
Yeah, basically. I was having a look and I was like,
you saw that troll comment too. I'm just gonna ignore it.
That was funny.
Oh gosh, that was pretty funny.
It's just, you know, it's cool. Like, I appreciate the views from you too.
From everybody.
Everybody can give the views. We appreciate it.
Have y'all seen Us yet?
Yes.
Oh, I heard
it last night.
I heard
saw Friday.
All of her, Lupita needs all the coins,
all of it,
flowers and accolades, apparently, because they said everybody has said that Lupita made that movie.
She did.
Oh, child, I was so shook at the end.
Shooketh. Okay.
I'm gonna, like, I heard that it's not scary, so I'm gonna get over my, like, horror movie moment, and I'm gonna go see it, because that's my whole thing. I'm like, look, I don't pay for scary movies. I don't pay to get scared.
It was scary to me, but I'm a baby. I never watched.
I didn't even jump, and I'm scared.
Like, comparing it to Get Out, which I found to just have a couple jump scenes. How was Us? Was it kind of the same vibe?
It was definitely darker than Get Out. It was a lot darker. It was a lot more sinister. You know what? That's the perfect word to describe it, is sinister. It's very sinister and creepy. I wouldn't say it was scary, but I'm also the type of person that, like, literally gets scared of everything. So I was scared because I'm a baby.
Okay, that's good enough for me.
It was just a lot of twists and turns also.
Don't go alone. Go with a friend.
Going during the day.
I went with my family, and that was a mistake because they talk all the time.
Oh, really?
My dad is that type of person to be like trying to, I don't know, a movie, and I'm just like, and he'll be like, oh, Troy, I'm just like, Daddy, I am an English major. I analyze stuff all day. Please let me just watch this movie.
Yeah. Aw.
We all have one family member that wants to do that. We all have one.
Are you that one, Brittany?
No. I was the person
that for you.
She said we all had that one family member. I thought she went herself.
Nope. I'm the family member that's just like,
yeah, I'm that one. Like, please shut up.
Get to the car. We can have this conversation, but right now, I'm here.
You have to pay attention to the movie. Like, pay attention.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's another Peele movie, and he's made it very clear that all of his movies make you think, and if you don't feel like you need to think deeper, then you weren't watching the movie. Like,
I had to go home and look up Jeremiah 11:11 because I was like, I need to know.
I did it during the movie.
I couldn't do it during the movie. I was too freaked out.
Oh, Jeremiah 11:11. I feel like I know what that is. Oh, Jesus.
I will never see the numbers 11:11 the same way again. I'm so mad.
Right?
Look, he ruined that one song for me with the trailer, so I just know he's
I got 5 on it. It's ruined.
It's ruined. And it plays through the whole movie. It's not just one individual.
Oh no!
Whole movie.
You know we're gonna be able to listen to that song again.
I got 5 on it. I'm just, my body immediately goes horror.
Yes, horror. Yes. But I will say the film is brilliantly done. Everything starts to make sense when when you finish watching it. It all starts to come together even more. And so I think I will go see it again.
Just
to catch more things and to, like, notice more things earlier. It's one of those movies that you probably should watch. Kind of like Get Out. You probably should watch it 2 or 3 times to fully
get Out 3 times, I think, before I truly, because then I watched the YouTube video where Peel is breaking down like all the symbolism in it. So like after I watched it, I was like, I have to go watch this again. And then I watched it and I'm like,
yeah.
I have literally never watched it.
I have not seen all of Get Out yet.
I haven't seen it.
I probably will now that I've seen Us. Out of curiosity, finish
to be horrified to another step.
I know. But I don't know. It was really well done. Lupita was masterful. The kids, give them all the awards.
Give all the coins.
The kids did so well, like extremely well.
Especially the son.
The son was a little breakout star.
Like, that was crazy.
All right, well, we'll go see it. It's safe to say that we finished our book review, guys.
I know.
We were struggling to come up with an hour worth of stuff to say.
Does anyone want to say anything about the end? Do y'all want to say anything about the end since I didn't read that far?
Yeah. I'm waiting for other people to read the end and then tell me what they think, honestly.
Right.
Like, I need more people to co-sign my thoughts first.
Because everyone that I'm friends with on Goodreads gave it 5 stars.
Yes.
So
I was like, okay, so I'm gonna wait.
All the booktubers I trust gave it 5 stars, and that's why I was saying, like, I understand where the 5-star rating is coming from, because if you really emotionally connect to those trauma, slavery stories, colonial stories, it's going to be a 5-star read for you because you're emotionally connecting to these traumatic things that have happened in these characters' lives and things like that. But I was so disconnected from those things. My first read through, it wasn't until I went back and reread the beginning that I was starting to feel some type of emotion. But my first time through, I was so emotionally disconnected because I was confused and I was still trying to figure out the format of the story and what was going on. And then I didn't emotionally connect to any of the characters. Like, I didn't truly like care for their well-being. I just felt like a distant observer, like I'm watching from the outside. And so that's why I just didn't connect to it like that.
Yeah, I'm going to wait to hear your thoughts and things, but
yeah, hit us up in the group chat.
Yeah.
Oh, you know I will. The second I'm done, I'm going to be like, what?
Although if you DNF it, I need to know, so I'll know for future reference I'm allowed to DNF things.
Right.
Y'all are allowed. You could have DNF'd this. I would have understood.
I read this book for you guys, okay? Just want everybody to know I read this book for y'all because by part 2, I was ready to just close it for good. But I
think that we just don't do well with Black trauma porn.
Yeah, we don't. That's why I said so hard.
I told y'all in the group chat I wanted an Eat, Pray, Love book, but I got this.
Well, unfortunately, our March book of the month that we're supposed to start reading is not Love. I can never remember what is it? Red Leopard?
Black Wolf?
Yes.
Yeah, Red Leopard, Black Wolf. It's definitely like a not high. I don't think it's high fantasy. I think but it is like a deep fantasy book. It's the beginning of a trilogy. So.
And I've heard that it's very bloody.
Ooh.
Oh, I like that.
I'm cool with that.
There's a lot of action. It's very bloody, and people are giving it mixed reviews. I've seen people who really liked it, and I've seen a lot of people who didn't really like it as much. So I'm curious to see how we will feel about it.
Yeah, as I know for a fact that it's not going to be slave porn, so I'm good. Like,
at least I hope not.
I hope not, unless they're killing their slave masters. Then that's it.
Slave revolt.
Let it be like a fantasy galaxy slave revolt. Oh, I'm there.
That actually does sound really good.
Yeah.
Somebody should write that. Or tell me about a book that is about that. But yeah, so we should start reading that, I guess, this upcoming week. And then we'll announce when we're going to have a live show for that. And then we're going to go ahead and see what we want to do for April. You guys have any thoughts?
I don't have a book.
I don't have a book yet.
I need to go look at my list.
I kind of want to read Queenie now.
Oh, now you want to read Queenie.
I should vote for Queenie.
You know what? Our picks were only 2 away from each other. So
I do regret voting for my own pick.
No, I'm just gonna say, like, I've only been offering fantasy books. I'm not to be blamed for any of these votes.
You're not.
Ooh, we were recommended The Street by Ann Petrie for our April read.
Ooh. I definitely want to read something a lot more interesting and not traumatic. something a lot more imaginative. I'm just ready for something different.
Yeah, either that or contemporary, basically, because I need some happy, fluffy stuff.
Nazy41 says, Black Leopard Red Wolf is not a lazy read. I enjoyed it, but it's entirely too long. You will put in a lot of work to get through the book.
Oh, great.
We've already announced it though, so we kind of have to go through it.
Yeah, we got to do it.
That's my style of fantasy books. So, okay, so the genres for the street are fiction, classic, cultural, historical fiction, race novel.
Huh.
Oh, Anne Petrie was the first Black woman writer with book sales topping 1 million copies for her novel, The Street. Oh.
Interesting. Okay, that's definitely something to look into for April. Abigail says, you guys should read Red Rising by Pierce Brown. That is actually a space slave rising book.
There's one that exists?
Wow.
I don't know. Let me see, because I own that book.
I'm like looking it up on Goodreads.
I don't know if it fits the criteria of our book club, though.
Oh, it's not. Pierce Brown is not an African-American or African writer.
But I definitely want to read this book now.
I do.
It's already on my bookshelf, but it's one of those books that I kind of bought because of BookTube.
Oh, we'll save it because remember, I have that book readathon coming up that I'm actually announcing tomorrow.
Okay. I can read it during that.
It'll be April 14th to the 21st. So just go ahead and save it.
Yes, I'm excited.
Yeah.
Finally, time to read about the slaves revolting. I'm here
in
for
space. Slaves revolting in space.
I'm here for it.
Yep.
All right. So I think I'm going to suggest Queenie again for April.
I'll figure it out. I haven't decided yet. I have a list, so I'll put my suggestion out there sometime this week.
Okay. That's fair. Troy is suspiciously silent.
What? What? Did you ask me something?
Your goal is to figure out your book for next vote.
Oh, can I just do Queenie again?
Oh, you want to do Queenie?
What are y'all doing, Queenie? How are you going to take my pick?
Oh, I wanted it.
Okay.
I just got it in the mail.
OhSheReads can have it.
One less book to buy.
I'm gonna
I'll look for stuff within the next week.
Okay.
I'll have a new choice for you guys.
What's that?
I like the voting system though.
I like the voting system because it forces me to read things that, well, either A, are already on my TBR or it gives me a new book to read, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we should have a rule where we don't vote for our own pick.
Nah, we can keep voting for our own pick. It's just if you keep picking really bad ones, we get to blame you for it.
You guys have already blamed me.
If Queenie wins,
You
that's
didn't
my
finish the book and it was your choice.
right.
I know. But I mean, I think the serial killer was kind of interesting.
That made me rage quit.
The book choice that I'm gonna have is The Care and Feeding of the Ravenously Hungry Girls by Anissa Gray.
Ooh, I've been wanting to read that. I've been wanting to read that. That looks really good.
Yeah, that's my book choice for the next vote.
Oh wow. Okay, I like it.
In fancy. Plus, I really wanted a contemporary book in the mix. So
yeah,
there we go.
My pick is Queenie.
And we'll wait for Troy sometime this week to tell us.
I wasn't aware that I had to have one this early.
You don't.
You don't. We're just discussing it.
Yeah.
I got to go look at my list of books.
Yeah, I had to go look at my list of Black authors to make sure, because some of the books I want to read, they're probably going to be great books, but yeah, just didn't get there.
Yeah, I'm trying to I definitely want a different vibe and to get away from the more depressing, traumatic stories. You know?
Yep. But yeah, that's it, guys.
Yeah, that's it. I think we have concluded the discussion of this book, She Would Be King by Wayetu. Collectively, I think we would give it 3 stars. Would we recommend it? I personally would not recommend it unless unless you enjoy like really lyrical writing and magical realism and that type of thing. That too. That would be those would be my final thoughts. Would I recommend it to everyone? Not necessarily. It depends on what certain people like reading. I know some people that lean more towards the literary side and the more like, I guess if you like Toni Morrison's writing, I would recommend it to people who like Toni Morrison, but she's not as good of a storyteller as Toni Morrison.
Yeah, Toni Morrison's really good.
But I can read Toni Morrison and not feel any type of way, so yeah.
Well, that's it. Thanks for joining us on this live. We will announce our poll for their April book pick soon. For March, we are reading Red Leopard, Black Wolf. So make sure you get your copies from the library. You can get the audiobook, or you could purchase it yourself, although it is kind of pricey. I paid like $17.99 for mine, so I don't know if that was a wise decision or not. We'll see.
Yeah, I used a coupon on mine, so I forgot how much I paid for it. But yeah,
it was expensive, but we're going to start reading that this week, and then we will announce our March live show within the coming weeks, and we will announce our April poll within the coming weeks. And yeah, thank you so much for joining us. I guess this is it. We will say goodbye.
Bye.
Bye. See you next live.